If you've ever felt like you constantly put others before you, you struggle to say no, or you feel guilty anytime you do, this episode is for you. Hi, my name is Favor. Welcome back to the Misfit World podcast. Today we're talking about a topic which has immensely changed my life, and that's how to stop being a people pleaser and start prioritizing yourself. So before we delve into solutions, let's first define what people pleasing is. People pleasing essentially is you prioritizing other people's needs or happiness over your own and at your own expense. And it often comes from a place of fear of rejection, disappointing others, or fear of conflict, but often means that you put your own happiness on the back seat. And sometimes it might seem like a positive trait, but it can often leave you feeling drained or just feeling like you haven't shown yourself the respect that you deserve. It can also make you feel resentful or feel like you are invisible in your own life. If this sounds familiar, don't worry, you're not alone and you can break out of it. So first, let's do a self-check of some of the signs that you might be a people pleaser. These are things like saying yes to things that you don't actually want to do, feeling guilty when you set boundaries, or wanting to avoid conflicts at all costs. You also put other people's needs before yours, even at your expense or when it hurts you. You feel anxious when someone is upset with you, even if it's not your fault. Or you seek validation from others to feel good about yourself. If this sounds like you, it's time to shift the pattern, and let's talk about how you do that. The first step is to recognize that you do have a choice. A lot of people pleasers think that they don't have any other option but to say yes. But whenever you're faced with a decision, you have to step back and think, is this actually what I really want? And give yourself permission to say no. The whole world isn't going to come crumbling down, but just give yourself time to actually think over the decision that you want to make and think if that actually aligns with something that you want, and give yourself permission to say no if not. The next step is to start small with boundaries. So if you are posed with a decision that you need to make and it's not something that you necessarily want to do, you can say things like, maybe not tonight, rather than making up an excuse, just saying maybe not this time, or just taking some time to think over it, maybe sleeping on the decision and waking up the next morning with some more clarity, rather than just off the gun saying yes to it without actually processing and thinking about if it's something you want to do. Because a lot of the time we make decisions just right off the bat and then later regret it. So if we really take time to process what it is we're considering and think about if it's something we actually want to do, then we will be able to be a lot more confident in whichever decisions we make. And this is something I used to do a lot in terms of just saying yes to things or not really processing things. I've learned that it's better to sleep on things, even with emotions. A lot of the time, like, that's something that I've really been working on, is not being so fueled with emotions in the moment and letting things pass. Because a lot of the time you find that when time passes, you're able to have mental clarity and then come to a more informed decision about what you want to do going forward. So it's best to not make decisions in the heat of the moment and just think things over and then come back when you've been able to consider everything. So yeah, definitely start small with your boundaries and give yourself time to think about it before you make a decision. The next step is to get comfortable with discomfort. Now, saying no or setting boundaries can often feel uncomfortable, and that's totally normal, but the key is to sit in that discomfort rather than giving in, and realize that you're not responsible for other people's happiness. You need to prioritize your own happiness, and sometimes, it's better to stand on what you believe or stand on the principles you have or your convictions about things, rather than give in to someone just so you can appease them. And the more you learn to sit in that discomfort, the easier it will get, and it won't feel so discomforting over time. But it's really important to respect your decisions and be able to not give in and stand your ground. This next step is something that's really big for me and has really contributed to helping me to become less of a people pleaser. And that's to prioritize your self-respect over other people's approval. Now you have to think, would I rather wake up in the morning and be able to look at myself in the mirror and respect myself, or feel like I'm living a version of myself for other people, or living a life that pleases other people but not being my authentic self. And for me, the former was the more important thing. Being able to wake up each morning and know that I'm living my life authentically, I'm being true to myself, true to my values, true to my principles, and I'm not feeling like I'm having to be a fake or inauthentic version of myself to please other people. Now that can be very uncomfortable, you know, when you feel like you are going against the grain or going against the norm. But at the end of the day, what's more important is being able to say that you are living in your truth and you're being your most authentic self, which means that you are doing things that align with yourself and with your values, and not having to live a life that is not true to you because you're trying to please other people. And the more you honor your needs and respect your values and your principles, the more self-respect you would have for yourself, and the more self-respect other people will have for you genuinely. And in that sense, you'll also be able to attract people who also have that same kind of self-respect and also respect things which you hold dear to you. And that is essentially what you want in life. You don't want people who you feel like you're having to change yourself to conform, to be like, or to please. You want people who will respect you and, you know, love you for you, and you're not having to sacrifice who you are or your values to please them. So yeah, prioritizing self-respect over approval means that you're not only prioritizing your values and respecting your principles, but you're attracting people who respect them too. This next step is a really, really big one, and it's to stop over explaining yourself. You don't need to explain yourself to say no. You know, simply saying I can't or this doesn't work for me is enough, and you don't need to go into details. I found that with people pleasing, over explaining yourself invites negotiation, and with that you often get tempted to say yes. So the best thing is to just keep it short and sweet and say no. And you don't owe anyone an explanation. You just need to say your piece and tell them how it is, and it's up to them to take it or not, but you don't need to go into further details. This is something that has also been really big for me, because I used to feel like I had to justify so much and explain to people why I made certain decisions or why I did certain things, and it was honestly exhausting, because I feel like sometimes when people don't understand or they don't want to understand, there's like not much you can say, or even if you say a lot, they've already made their mind up about what they want or the way they view certain things. So even if you explain yourself, it doesn't necessarily lead to any better end for you. And at the end of the day, it just makes you feel more riled up. It makes you reconsider your own values, or sometimes sacrifice your own authenticity. So, you know, for me, being able to stand my ground and not go into further details about things and just tell people this is what I believe, or this is what I'm going to do or not going to do, and I don't feel like I need to explain myself, that's been a really big thing, because it's not invited that argument, because you just say that you don't have the time or the space for it. And I think it also makes people respect you more, because it shows that you do have a sense of self and you know who you are, and that you're not so easily influenced by other people's views or persuasions about certain things. So that's really, really important. Stop over explaining yourself. And I think people pleasing also sort of links into your own self-worth, because when you have a sense of self-worth and you know who you are, you won't easily be influenced by other people's persuasions or views about who you should be. And something that could really help is affirmations, repeating things to yourself about your principles, stuff like my needs are just as important as anyone else, saying no doesn't make me a bad person, and also that you deserve relationships that don't cause you to overextend yourself. Telling yourself these things make you aware of your own value and what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. And sometimes repeating them to ourselves helps reassure us that we are making the right decision and not having to compromise on who we are or what we want. Breaking free from people pleasing takes time, but the more you practice setting boundaries and prioritizing yourself, the more confident you will be at living life in your own terms and living life more authentically. So I hope you start implementing some of the steps that we've discussed today to stop being a people pleaser, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye.